How you guys doing? Today's gonna be a banger of a video because it is to help you guys with your Godforge quests, and technically, for the very first time for many people, team building. Why not, right? I wanted to kind of go through what I would consider the basics, kind of like to understand building a team for the very first time if you're a beginner or whatnot, and you feel a bit overwhelmed with all the information, all the different heroes that could be in Godforge, because let's be honest, there is a lot. However, if you just break it down into these, honestly, 5 slots and these 5 categories, and just understand this basic premise in the early game, you will honestly have a much better time, and you'll be able to actually understand when you will unlock one of the new heroes, for example, that could come out for an invoker, or let's just reset it and get any of these heroes. You're going to have at least some understanding when you pull any epic or legendary hero, where they're going to go into your team, how they might interact in that team, and what would be, for argument's sake, your role as a new player to upgrade what we can see here on screen. Because I think that is honestly what's going to help the most players the most. Understand how to start your basic team off and get cooking, and then working on that upgrade progression. So, smash like, comment, and subscribe. Let's dive into it. And also, if you want to join in on today's video, you can, because a lot of the information will be in the description down below with the link to this inside, and you can see all of my notes here, which is a really quick, basic dumb down of what I am about to explain, which is obviously the main bread and butter, and then the summary of the lineups there at the very, very bottom. But the way you want to kind of look at this is quite simple. What you want to do is always kind of imagine slot 1, the leader at the moment, is going to be mainly whoever you're generally going to pick in the Godforge quests, right? Depending on what's, is your main pick and what you've checked out from myself and other Godforge content creators when it comes to their hero kits with their wild cards, you will know some legendary heroes have leader bonuses and some do not. If you pick one that doesn't, don't worry, I've got you covered in the next part, right? But for everyone else, this is going to be your first pick. So you can imagine, no matter what, that's going to go into slot 1. And in this scenario, I've gone with a really easy example just to go down this niche route and probably make Odd One smile when he watches this video, which is Dracula, right? If you picked Dracula as your legendary hero, and whatever weapon you've picked for, any of your choice, you pick the correct weapon that you want, right, for this legendary hero for your team, right? What you would do then is on slot 2 is consider the best starter hero out of the 3 that you get to pick from. And this is going to be between Lady Shock, Ramses, and Guan Yu. This is going to be really important because you got to remember, no matter what, when you start the game, you will have 2 guaranteed heroes, which is this starter hero and this Godforge Quests hero. And having them honestly work kind of together or perfectly together is drastically going to increase, obviously, how easy the content will be for you to conquer at first, and honestly, just make things look cooler when you're actually demolishing the content too. So what you need to consider is, depending on your main hero that you're going to pick, the star hero wants to combine. So a good example here is Dracula, Lady Shock. Both heroes are placing bleeds. Both heroes benefit on placing bleeds, and what's really good about this as well, Dracula does kind of want one of these heroes to place enough bleeds so he can ultimate, try and get those stacks off potentially, and do a bunch more damage, hopefully, with his kit as it's been attended by the devs at the moment, right? And that's going to allow him then to restack the bleed with the Lady Shock and carry on with the bleed team, right? So as you can see, slot 1 and slot 2 in this scenario are 2 DPSs basically that are working together. The next 3 slots are basically super important, and no matter what, I think most teams and most players will have this kind of pool that they're going to work with. And that is slot 3, which is your defender, slot 4, that is your invoker or healer, and then slot 5, which is kind of a flexible disruptor or additional DPS slot, because in scenarios when you are playing Godforge, you got to remember certain campaigns does allow only 4 of these members to go in, and some scenarios like the bosses do allow 5 people to go in, right? So being able to have 4 or 5 is really important, because this 5th slot means you can either put this in for one of your slot 2, 3, or 4 heroes in order to get through the content for certain reasons, or in the 5-man team, it's gonna really explode your team into that next level, right? So with this, you can see I have gone as free to play and as noob friendly as possible, as people say. That has gone Tristan, Isolde, Escade. All 3 of these heroes, if we go onto them, are all rare heroes in Godforge, right? This is a defender, and as you can see here, he does transfer 1 debuff from a random ally to himself, so he takes away any bad debuffs from your team, which is really cool. He has a 200% shield, which isn't too bad. And then obviously if Isolde is on the team, which she is in this scenario, she's going to get 50% increased shielding too, right? Which is really nice. And then you got the shield of Cornwall as well. So you can kind of see nice basic defender, fits the role, right? Isolde, kind of the same with her speed in battle aura, but then she has all of this really good goodness, including the heart echo, which is the way she heals in this game, right? Going into Skade, she is now the disruptor, and what this hero does, if you guys don't know, is technically she places freeze onto targets, and this is a really important slot, because again, when you start going through, and I will showcase different examples of this, right? But as you go through, you're going to need some sort of disruptor to honestly lock down waves. What will happen when you go to your team is what you'll figure out is your slot 1 and slot 2 damage output just isn't enough because of the enemies able to honestly just either outlast it or to absolutely decimate one of them. And what it ends up happening, no matter what, and this was in Alpha Wave 3, 2, and 1, you needed some sort of disruptor for at least the Alpha Wave caverns at like floor 140 up to 150, because I completed all 150, as many people know, right? You needed a Skada, you needed a Percival, you needed a Mordred, you needed an Odin, right? These are all disruptors that you needed to put in because your damage generally, especially if you're trying to speed run and be the first to complete stuff, isn't enough, right? When it comes into scaling, you can ignore all of that. You can obviously scale to your heart's content, and obviously technically damage can clear most of the content, as many people will say. But at some point, DPS will get capped, and this is where slot 5 is super, super important, right? So if you look down here on my notes, and if you guys have read this yourself, you will see this is exactly the same. So this is just team is a foundational understanding progression of like any kind of debuff based team where your leader is a legendary of choice from your Godforge quests, and then you're going to use your slot 2 as that starter, which obviously helps you in the early game and mid game and maybe even late game if you're still needing to use them, while you're looking for obviously upgrades as we go into the next section. And then slot 3 is going to be your defenders, slot 4 obviously going to be your invoker, and then slot 5 being your disruptors. So you can see this is literally everything I've just said, kind of a lot more basically laid out for you. So now let's go into that tunnel and let's think about, maybe you are new, you've been playing now, we've cleared some of the content, and we're getting new heroes, right? We're getting new heroes and we don't know what to do with them, right? So let's just remember the basics, which is firstly, we need any sort of DPS that we're running, right? To technically, if we go into slot 1 or slot 2, they need to either be really good on their own, or they need to kind of be synergizing really well with these teams, right? You don't want to be breaking apart a working team to put something that's just forcibly put in and it's going to be all clunky. Let's be honest, it's nice to be smooth. That's why we like Mercedes. Let's be honest, the Germans mastered that, right? So if we go in with that premise, you've got to think, if we just swap this archetype into disruptors alone, right? You could have pulled any of these blue disruptors here, and depending on what ones you've got, you can look at this role, especially with Skadi, and say, is that going to do the same thing that Skadi does, but in a dungeon better, or does it just do better than Skadi? Because if it does generally do better than like Skadi, you're most likely going to have this in your main team, and then maybe Skadi is going to be better during certain dungeons and bosses. And that's where you're going to start to realize your slots are becoming more like toolboxes that you can move on the fly. So if you move even to like slot 4 now with invokers, right, we can go back up, get rid of, obviously, the archetype of disruptors, and let's just go invokers, right? We'll start with a different legendary in a moment, don't worry. But again, let's just pick any of them, right? You could have picked any of these guys, and maybe Muse is one that you have, right, in the early game, and she starts to heal. Maybe you get Ankh as well, which is doing some shielding instead. And if you get these style of heroes, you know you could be running them instead of a Soldier because they're fulfilling that same slot that you need in the early game, right? Then let's say you summon a bit more and you unlock maybe Emotep, right? Maybe you unlock Makosh, right? Maybe you unlock some of these cooler heroes. Well, if you look at Emotep here, obviously this is from Alpha Wave 3, all the information that you're about to see, so just take that with a grain of salt. But he does place Reflect, he also places Stalwart, right? So you got to think, if you're able to put this support straight away into a team, and its design is to reflect bosses, you know, disables and so on, well, this is going to be really good in those bosses, right? So you can already put him in there, right? This places Ward as well, which is really cool for people, and you can kind of see what Emotep does here. But you've got to start to understand then, okay, that's the Invoker slot. If we move now back into our, like, Lady Shock or Dracula slot, what happens if, as many people might ask now, if you start with a different hero, right? So argument's sake, if I make a brand new team, and let's just say we have my own Apollo, right? So if I type in Apollo, and he comes in, we've got him in there, right? So we know we've got our Apollo, right? He's my main bread and butter. Well, this second hero is quite interesting for me because I can choose to, again, to either go Ramses, I could either choose to go Guan, or I could go down the Lady Shock route, right? The reason I can do any of these three is because at the moment, I'm not tied down to any sort of realistic playstyle. Yes, Apollo does place Mend, and yes, he also has a chance to place Acid, but that doesn't mean I need to run Ramses, or that doesn't mean I do not need to run Ramses, because maybe I'm running a double Acid team, right? So what I would do, honestly, is eventually, and I've kind of been thinking about this myself, run Guan Yu, just so we have this really powerful basic ability, right? And make it do some more damage, even with his core, really powerful ability. Maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. But to make it really work, I know there's one hero in the game that is an all-star, and this is, I think, Ragewood's bread and butter. It's his boy Shishi. And we can run instantly this little double rare composition with Apollo, and we can already see this starting to form. We could run Isolde again, just so we've got the Invoker of choice for most players. And slot 5 is open right now. Slot 5 could be anything that we need. Maybe we pull something that works with Shishi, right? And make his skills go off, because he has some really cool instances of skills with Tian-based allies. So if he does get Guan Yu into that joint attack, that's more damage. If we find another maybe Tian-based unit, so if we kind of come out of the heroes here and just go into the what is it now, faction, go down to Tian, you gotta think, if we get any of these heroes now with our Shishi or Guan Yu, we're going to be cooking. We could put Lubu in there, we could put Chang in there, Dao Chan in there, we could put Wai San, Nizao, Sun Tzu, Hao Yi. Like, there's a lot of choice that we could put with this starter team that I've already just put out, right? And that could be a DPS choice, that could be even a disruptor choice, and it's going to start to work. And since I've got that, I now know, okay, I'm going to be probably looking for maybe a better defender and a better, obviously, like invoker support unit to maybe put in instead. Or because I've already got Apollo, I can be a bit more greedy here and instead run, you know, DPS again. So let's just put a newbie in just because it's a bit more DPS, just argument's sake. And then again, this slot could be anything, right? If we just put Scardy in there, that's a devastating team, right? If we put Nizar in, right, that's a devastating team. And that's just working off my heroes, right? So hopefully today's video has kind of made you guys understand it. And what's really cool about this website, if you guys have not noticed, you can make your teams, title them, write what you need to write, obviously put as much information as you want into them. You can save these teams and you can just load them up as you go. You can even delete it if you want to and make them new on the fly. Obviously, this code will be down in the description down below so you can see this team. But hopefully today's video is kind of like helped you guys out. I know it's maybe a lot to take in still, but hopefully I've broken it enough down where even if you read my Godforge team builder here for the team basics, you're going to have just the bare minimum that you're going to need to honestly have the most fun when tackling most of this content. And then maybe in a future episode, as you guys are going to be wanting to see, we can make some brand new teams that you really want to see, which are joint attackers, bleed teams, maybe strong hit teams, you name it. We can find those 5-man teams and theorycraft for you guys. So if you've enjoyed it, you know what to do. Smash like, comment, and subscribe. Till the next one, stay safe, stay sneaky, guys. Peace out.